Tim, I'm going to hand to you for 2 seconds just to introduce the next panel, and hopefully we're going to find JT. So we're having a little bit of a problem beaming JT in from wherever he is. Let me have a chat with Mark, introduce the session, and I'll try and do the production stuff.
Hey, Mark, you out there?
Hey, Tim.
You're clearly, with your background, you're not yet to Amsterdam, because I see Matt there as opposed to flat spaces. So CDN Alliance, while Dom's trying to find our other panelists, just let's bring people up to speed real quick on CDN Alliance. Kind of how long you've been around and what the focus is, and then we'll come back to the questions for the three of you.
Yeah, sure. So CDN Alliance is an industry association bringing the CDN industry together. So we connect the industry as well as the community in the CDN space, which previously has never been done. We support the industry and the community by giving insights, supporting them with challenges that are in the industry to solve them. The third part of what we do is really representing, so being the face and the voice of the industry. Before this, there was no entity you could talk to if you wanted to talk to the CDN industry, and that's basically what we're trying to do here. We're about a year old, roughly, so still starting phase, but we're slowly getting there in the industry.
So out of curiosity, I mean, I know we had CDN Federation and a number of other things in the past that weren't really necessarily the alliance model. Why do you think nobody's really sort of gone this direction for a working group for CDNs before this? Was there competition?
I mean, CDNs are around for what, 20 years roughly, since the start of basically Akamai, and the evolvement of the industry has been really siloed. So everybody has built their own CDN, it's still built based on open standards, otherwise it wouldn't work. But still very siloed. So everybody's doing their own part, and their magic sauce, etc. But there was never really a collaboration between them. So far, it hasn't really been needed. But if you look at now the challenges that we have as an industry, whether it's example here, sustainability, that's a common challenge, and goes beyond the full industry, and there are more of those: availability, performance, scalability, security. There are so many topics that are relevant for the industry as a whole, and not necessarily only for a specific CDN out there, or specifically a CDN vendor that is out there doing the same thing. And that's what we're really trying to make sure that those are coming together and solve those challenges out there, because only these challenges, we can only solve them as an industry. We can't solve them alone.
Fair point.
Okay, so I think we might have JT. Can we just, it was appropriate enough for the Streaming Video Technology Alliance. JT's come in by audio. JT, can you just say a few words, and can we see if we can get you live on the stream? Excitement mounts. It says talking permitted. He has unmuted. Yes, can you hear me? He's there. We can indeed hear you. How you doing?
It's because
I'm doing well. Hello from Riga, Latvia.
Oh, excellent. Nice. It's because he added the word technology to his organization. That's why he's having trouble. So,
I'm doing my best.
Sorry, we're not responsible for video conferencing. That would be Zoom.
All right, so Dom, I'm going to ask a question, and then I'm going to have to step off here myself. But I was asking Mark about CDN Alliance. You'll go ahead and bring JT, in to talk about SVTA. But let me put the question to you, Dom. All the organizations here have best practices. All the organizations here have collaborated together on an individual level between, the executive directors and founders and like that. Every one of them also has sustainability challenges that their members have. Why are we having a conversation between the three of us today as opposed to each organization talking about its sustainability?
The word that jumps to mind is the word deduplication, or it's a contraction of words. I think, sustainability is by nature about efficiency. A lot of engineering is about efficiency, actually, more broadly. And so as we started to sort of take our first steps as greening and streaming, we reached out to both Mark, who I was quietly aware was at sort of at a similar stage with the formation of CDN Alliance, and also to the much more established SVA, now SVTA, to get some sort of guidance really and mentorship. And given that there were discussions going on in each of those groups about sustainability, they were equally sort of pleased that we were stepping forward to go and grab that particular bull by the horns. So in the effort to sort of avoid having to join 3 different groups to talk about the same thing, we thought we'd actually sort of, just make sure we had the right pieces of paper on each other's desks, and try to pull to our own strengths. We're not aspiring to be a standards body. We're not aspiring to be a technical technical standards sort of proposition. I'm not sure it's fair. JT, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure it's fair to call SVTA strictly a standards body, but you certainly have done some great work with things like open caching, and you have protocols in design and so on and so forth. And if we can contribute sustainability thinking and cachet to that effort, that seems much better than trying to develop a sustainability based protocol or something that would just be upside down. So that, I think, I hope that sort of doesn't muddle everyone, but that, I think, goes some way to answering the question. JT.
No, I agree with you. Right. Yeah. So we're not an SDO, a traditional SDO, right? We focus on best practices and specs and guidelines and functional requirements. Simply because streaming technology is moving too fast. Standards take years to ratify. By the time they're ratified, the technology's already moved past it. So we chose to remain flexible, and in doing so, questions like sustainability come up, right? They can be inserted into the conversation. And Dom, you wrote a great article for Streaming Media Magazine in 2019 about the sustainability in streaming video, and that at that point was the genesis of an idea for me to actually launch a part of the then SVA to address sustainability. And that would have been one of our infamous microsites. We, we had too much stuff going on. And then along came bringing of streaming, and it was like, thankfully somebody's just going to do this collectively so that we can all help participate rather than, like what you said, doing it individually. So I think what you said is exactly right. We need to all be doing this together, and we are trying to start to insert the conversation about sustainability into all of the work we're doing, all of those best practices, docs, specs, even code across our working groups, so that it becomes a part of the design of solutions rather than an afterthought.
Perfect. So JT, you're flying blind here. Tim's had to step out because he's full of head cold and so on. He's just at the doctor's at the moment, so he's dropped out the benefits of streaming. Everyone's completely virtual and so on. But let's just talk a little bit more about how we as organisations can best collaborate. I think there are dovetails and overlaps between GOS, between CDNA and SVTA. We have kind of created as much liaison. In fact, JT, I'm really delighted. I've mentioned this to all the working groups and to the members. I'm delighted to say that you asked us to update your glossary with some more sustainability stuff. Barbara, formerly SMT, formerly SMT's done a great job with picking up some key words are in and around the sort of sustainability topics and so on. But we went into a great catharsis in working group 1, which is our discussion group that's focused on terminology and measures in and around our industry relating to sustainability. We went into a deep discussion about what's. That conversation's gone on for the best part of 6 or 8 months, and we finally produced a document which I said to all the members, right, if nobody else has got any more edits, and I'm going to tell JT we're ready to give it to him at the summit. So formally, I'm going to let you know that I'm going to send you a document after this, which is a 2-3 pager talking in some depth about what's in relation to streaming. And I think hopefully that's a good example of how we can start to interoperate and so on. So look forward to that document. In the meanwhile, I'm actually going to ask Mark. Mark, you wear two hats because you're well, multiple hats actually. In fact, you wear nearly more hats than I do. You of course are a member of Greening and Streaming, and you run the CDN Alliance. And talk to us a little bit about those dual roles and that thinking. You've got your mute on. Mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, we know each other for, I don't know, 2 decades now or something.
Yep, absolutely.
Very long time. So when you started the Greening and Streaming baby steps, let's put it that way, I was immediately like triggered on this. Not necessarily from a Siglin point of view, but from an Excel point of view. Because what I do primarily as a work within Excel is connecting a lot of people. So collaboration on a topic that's also dear to me, for me was like a 1 + 1. So when you said, okay, I'm going to go for it, I'm gonna set Greening and Streaming up, I really wanted to jump in directly and support you guys on what you've been doing. So that's the Excel point of view. That's really more a personal view on this. And then from a CDN Alliance perspective, that of course is a little bit different because we represent an industry as such. But there are, you mentioned overlaps. I'd love to call them touch points rather than overlaps. There are touch points that we see where we don't have to do the work that you're doing. Right? Duplication is not an interest of anyone. So we don't have to do the stuff that you're doing. However, there are learnings that we can have as a CDN Alliance from this that we can adapt to what we're doing, right? CDNs are more than just streaming. Streaming is part of CDNs, it's media delivery, but there's a lot more that CDNs do. Whether it's bit delivery, game downloads, etc., but also dynamic delivery, edge, security. There are all kinds of other stuff that is also relevant, where we can duplicate stuff that and learn from it that we can use deeper down into the CDN Alliance stuff. Now, another in-depth here is we also look a lot more on network stuff. So if you look at CDN Alliance, we're not just about the application layer, we're also looking at anything on the network side. And there are some efficiencies there that we think we can do as well, which are not really touched on what Greening and Streaming does, but where we can focus on. So that's where the collaboration that we see happening between Greening and Streaming and what the CDN Alliance does on the two ends here.
Perfect. And a similar question, JT, for you. You know, really, we should be going around the table, sort of having a bit of a love in here, really saying, you know, what can we do more for each other? Looking forward over the next year, you know, something's caught my ear that Chris from Disney was talking about, and I think I've mentioned to you before. He'd mentioned this draft capacity acquisition protocol or something that the SVTA started out, and it kind of lost a bit of momentum. Chris and I had a conversation at Streaming Media East about maybe reinvigorating that with power as a KPI being fed into that, because obviously that's now a big it's not just a latency sensitive thing, it's not just an availability of resource, it's a waste of energy question. And if we can maybe explore that sort of thing together, I'd really be interested to open that door and so on. What's going on the SVTA that we could get involved with and help you with?
Yeah, no, I mean, so let's start out answering that question is how can we help each other, right? So there's two ways. One is to share information, and that's what our liaison agreements are really for. And that allows us to allow other organizations to send somebody into our working groups, right? They can come and participate, they can come and audit, they can come and join the conversation. So that right there establishes a connection where information is shared. So we're no longer duplicating efforts. The second part is really about collaboration. And that's like, for example, the glossary. So the SVTA wanted to develop an industry glossary for streaming video terminology. And that, our goal is to make that a ubiquitous and authoritative source of terminology for streaming video. All of our documents going forward take from that glossary. So all of our documents have a page in there dedicated to terms that are specific to that spec, best practice guideline. As we start to have conversations about sustainability, by the Greening of Streaming providing information and CDN Alliance even providing terminology into that glossary, and mind you, we give credit, right, to the organizations or owners of those terms. By providing that information, we then incorporate that and fold that into our documents going forward, so they become a part of the solution that the SVTA is pushing into the market. So that could be open caching, that could be capacity management, that could be configuration interface APIs, could be anything. So yes, we want to look at things like power, as a KPI or other sustainability KPIs. We want to make sure we're looking at how is the CDN Alliance defining the use of CDN for streaming video. So those are really the two ways that I think we can work together. And what we probably need to do is the three of us, sit down and look at projects across each of our organizations and figure out where they connect, and then start working to bridge those information sharing and collaboration so that we're actually doing something together going forward.
Yes, awesome. I totally agree. I think that might be an IBC conversation. If not, then let's do that straight after as a virtual thing. But I think if there was one area that I think we probably could use as an anchor for that conversation, my gut feeling is it's around service level agreements, and I think service level agreements are probably a little bit less technical than one might expect, but are absolutely paramount. It was alluded to by some of the questions earlier, where Tim was raising the issue. We've got an industry, a traditional broadcast industry, that needed everything nailed down, big iron, had to be always on, ultra reliable. We've now moved into a highly dynamic virtualized environment, whether that's CDN, whether that's streaming, or whether that's looking at the energy requirements of having systems that are powered down quickly. These are, in my mind, all things that are about virtualization and about more efficient orchestration. So, Mark, JT, any thoughts on that? I think SLA would be a good pretext for some of these conversations.
Yeah, no, this is JT. So I actually think you're right. One of the things that we're seeing as we're starting to explore, for example, in our tech briefs, is like microservices architectures. So it's the idea of streaming architectures moving to a really containerized approach, and that approach demands a focus on sustainability, right? On power consumption, on other KPIs that are critical for making sure that kind of solution is sustainable. So I absolutely agree. We need to have these conversations now, so that we, so that we're not making them after the fact, right? I was on a webinar with Barbara talking about this. It's like security. Security used to be an afterthought. I made an app. How do I make it secure? No. I'm building an app. How do I make sure it's secure all the way through building it? So we need to do that now. So I want to sit with you and Mark at IBC or right after and figure out how we start that conversation about a server to server, or about what that first step is to make sure that we get this moving in the right direction.
Mark, any thoughts?
Yeah, I see the same on the CDN side, right? I mean, look at CDNs in general, we're moving much more to the edge. Now, of course, that comes with a more distributed workload and distribution load, but it also means that it might be less efficient from a carbon footprint perspective. So we really need to take a look at this. What's the effect of that? It's nice that we have the edge, but what's the effect that we have in this? That's not being researched as such, but certainly that is something we should dive a little deeper in as part of this.
Brilliant. There's one other thing I'd like to put to you guys, because I like adventuring sort of slightly risque subjects and so on, and we can, especially with you two, and maybe this is one for IBC as well. I'd like to raise the spectre of good enough, and this touches both SVTA and CDN Alliance. I would wonder if we might venture putting out to our respective organizations the idea that something like a 2K stream as a default baseline is the stream that should be pre-cached. And if you want to go for a gold service stream, that we start getting our organizations to set an expectation. If you want an 8K, 16K, 3000 frame a second, ultra UHD stream, you might have to wait 4 or 5 seconds because it won't be sat in the cache, specifically to reduce caching pressure. And I think again, it's kind of like SLA, but with the consumer. But if we can, but especially, and I put that to you both because open caching, SVTA, CDN Alliance caching, I think that's an area which might merit some, like to the extent that it might merit a working group within greening and streaming. So put that out here now. Shoot me down in flames because I'm used to it. But any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I have a thought here. I mean, it was one of the presentations earlier, like where broadcasters need to do more linear channels because there's just much more. That also means less cache efficiency in general, right? So that has an impact on how we distribute content. I mean, CDNs in general are just the ones that deliver, right? And they want to deliver as efficient as high quality as possible towards end users. That's their ultimate goal. CDNs cannot educate as such. CDN industry cannot really educate them, their customers, and eventually their customers, on how to do this. So this is something that needs to change on the consumer side, or maybe the actual content provider side, to really change that behavior and say, hey, we're only going to offer the high 16K stream if you wait 3 seconds. CDNs can offer this, I mean, in terms of technology wise, but they're not in the education mode to make sure that they can have this. So it's very difficult for a CDN, because it's just a service delivery mechanism, to really change this.
Interesting. JT, any last thoughts?
Yeah, so to add to that really quickly, right? So we have our configuration interfaces. Those 3 documents define how a content operator or streaming platform would configure delivery architectures, open caching, regular CDNs, et cetera. I feel that kind of what we'll call business logic is the technical challenge to that is, how do I incorporate that into my configurations? That would be done as a best practice, right? So that's something that we could tackle as an implementation guide on top of our configuration interface APIs. The problem is, right, is we at the SVTA don't steer into business requirements or business issues. So we could see this as a business issue, right? You put that, 2K, you pre-cache it in order to reduce down pressure on the caches for, larger UHD content. And that has business ramifications, and it might have SLA ramifications for a consumer, which are subscription models and all of that stuff. But I do see this as a recommendation we could make for streaming operators using our configuration interfaces in order to, let's call it, do the right thing when it comes to positioning content and delivering content to end users. I've been a big proponent of streaming operators being smart about mobile delivery. Deliver 4K to phones because you cannot see the difference between 4K and really 720p on a small screen. So why deliver all the extra bits? So, and anyway, I mean, that's where I think we could work together, is figuring out how to do some best practices on top of that configuration interface to help people figure out how to use it better.
And
fantastic, Mark.
Yeah, one small thing on this. So CDNs always look for efficiency, right? So the CDNs can work on efficiency. What, for instance, what Borpik is doing with Tim and with the Zone is an efficiency form. So this is still content delivery. It's still CDN delivery. However, more efficient than what is done traditionally. Let's put it that way. So those are certainly things as an industry we look at, how we can do this more efficient. But again, educating the consumer, that I think is a step too far away for the CDN industry to really be able to do that, because eventually we're just a service organization.
Interesting. Cool. Well, look, I look forward to, I'm glad to have started a bit of a conversation there, and I look forward to continuing that over the weekend. JT, thanks for dialing in. I know it's been a bit of a mission for you to get connected today, but well done. And safe travels inland. Why was I going to say inland? Safe travels to IBC. Mark, thanks again. And I'm going to cut away now to the next session.